7th, 2022, Zoning Board of Appeals meeting for Independence Township. If you would like to join me in the Pledge of Allegiance to start our meeting. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Brian, if we could have a roll call, please.
Mr. Auger?
Present.
Mr. Zurich?
Present.
Mr. Epping?
Present.
Mr. Galley?
Here.
And Mr. Sharl?
Here.
Thank you. Gentlemen, we have an agenda in front of us, and the agenda has been printed online, is also available here tonight. I should start by saying that this is a meeting both in person as well as online, so we may have some participants online. We'll keep going back and forth to people in the room as well as people online. There's a published agenda. Has everybody had a chance to review that? If there's any changes, we could discuss that now.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
We have a motion. Do we have support?
Support.
All in favor?
Aye.
So we've got an approved agenda. Our agenda tonight is made up of several different sections. We'll move right into next public comment. We'll then go to unfinished business and then new business. So right now we're at public comment. If anybody either online or in the room has anything that they'd like to discuss with the zoning board tonight that is not on the agenda. So we have 3 items on the agenda. If anybody's here tonight to talk about something that it's not on the agenda, now would be an opportunity to do that. Anybody?
Can we also mention to put their phones on vibrate?
Good idea. Anybody online? Doesn't look like anybody's online, so we'll close the public comment. As we go into unfinished business, I'll explain the way that the meeting will run. Mr. Auger brings up a good point. If anybody has their phones tonight that haven't silenced them or put them on vibrate, if you could do that, we'd appreciate it. For both unfinished and then for new business, what I'll do is I'll call the case and ask the applicant to come up. I'll read the case and the requested variance or petition into the record. We'll then ask you just to approach the lectern, give us your name and your address, and just tell us, kind of in plain language, what it is your application is seeking, what you're trying to do with your property that is outside of our ordinance, and why it may or may not be appropriate for ZBA consideration. I'll also ask anybody that is going to speak tonight to please sign in, as well as we'll have anybody that does want to speak come up to the lectern and give us your name and address so that we can have that accurately into the minutes. To finish off the process, the applicant will tell us what they're seeking. The board will likely have some questions, and we'll have a discussion back and forth with the applicant. At that point, I'll open it up for public comment. So if anybody's here tonight to speak about that agenda item, we'll ask you to, one at a time, just come up and introduce yourself and tell us your thoughts on that applicant. We'll then bring it back to the board. The board will probably have some additional questions or discussion. And at that point, likely the board will take into some type of consideration for each application. So with that, I will open item F, unfinished business. We have case number 22-0221, Sam Crizzy, petitioner requesting a variance from section 12.04B to permit a new sign to be located at the front property line of 4580 Sashabaw Road, which is in the R1A single-family residential district. This was postponed from the October 5th, 2022 meeting. Mr. Crizzy, or the applicant, are you here tonight?
He's not in. I told him not to come by, but I am the one who...
Come on up. Nice to see you again. How are you tonight?
Thank you so much. My name is Salma Miko. I am from House of Style Salon in Waterford, 4580 Sashabaw Road. So we were here October 5th, I believe, 2 months ago. And of course, I was refused the sign. And so I'm here with more knowledge about all the things that you requested, and I have all the answers, or hopefully all the answers that you wanted.
So if I could just recap a little bit. So you came on October 5th. We talked about you've got a salon on Sashabaw Road. It's got an old sign post.
Post.
The post is still there. And you weren't denied, but it was tabled or postponed to come back with some additional
Correct.
information. And so you're seeking to use that same sign location and put a 3-foot by 3-foot sign on it.
Correct.
Okay, great.
Can I approach the bench or should
Please.
I have some pictures?
Thank you.
That shouldn't take too long. I already know what I have to say.
We'll look at them as you keep, let us know what else you're
Okay, so the first page says House of Style. Welcome to House of Style. Pages 2 through 8, it's the interior of the boutique. I know you guys wanted to know what it looks like,
Mhm.
and it's not illegitimate, like you said, or something that doesn't make sense. So it's a boutique slash salon. I work there also as a hairdresser. I have 2 stations, one for color and one for haircuts. And I have also office space there, register, and some things that I do. I have a shampoo bowl there, as you can see that. Pages 9 and 10, there's the Sashaba Road going northbound, and you can see there's no sign there, and it's not even visible, even with all the trees there. Pages 11 through 13, that's the old pole. Page 14 is where the Meyer sign, where the road, Meyer Road is, and that's where the children come in from the bus, going up and down.
Just immediately north of you,
Right,
kind of out in your
yeah.
corner there.
Mhm. Okay. There's pages 15 through 17 is the old pictures of the coach's corner, and the previous commercial. Pages 18 through 19 is Mr. Farrell. Matthew Farrell owned the property there, and he was using it as storage or whatever was there. It was not vacant. So it was never really vacant. It was just being used, but never maintained on the outside, probably. This, pages 20 through 21 is the sign on the corner of Sashaba Road that shows Maybe and Sashaba, and that's very, very close. I mean, that's a very dangerous area there, and you were telling me that my sign is going to be dangerous on my side. So if you look at Maybe Road and Sashaba, that big whole sign over there is, I mean, I took a picture of it, and it's literally 10 feet from the road. So I just don't feel my sign is that dangerous as that sign with all that traffic going through. And just some of the picture with all the tree coverings and all that. I can't do anything on the north, and I can't do anything on the south. Because if I do anything on the south, there's a neighbor across the street, his window's over there. I mean, he's got a lot of trees facing Sashaba Road, so he really won't even be able to see my sign. Then putting it on the north, I have a school bus there with a lot of young children going up and down, and there's no sidewalk there. So I have no
So-
other way. And I can't put it on the building because I only have 8 feet.
Well, there's a nice sign on the building, currently.
The sign is not lit.
It's not lit, but there is a sign on the building.
Yeah, I
So
had to put a sign. I've been there almost 2 years.
I've got a question. One of the items that came up, and thank you for that additional information, one of the items that came up back in October was the location of the current sign and whether or not it's even on the property. It appears to be in the road right-of-way. Was that determined?
Yes, that was determined.
Thank you.
I'll need a copy of
So
all
I
those.
did get permit from the road commission. And I have a copy, and you have a copy. They approved my sign and the location. And you were
So-
determined on if they approve it or not, so they approved it.
I'm just gonna read this because this, I think, is important.
Mhm.
So it says, Dear applicant, your application for the permit has been approved. Prior to issuing a permit, the attached requirements must be met by you or your contractor. If the proposed work will be conducted by a contractor for hire, please provide them with the attached requirement sheet and bond form. The permit will be issued in the contractor's named item. Items required prior to permit issuance must be delivered in person by someone authorized by the signed permit or the contractor on the contractor's behalf. Failure to satisfy these will delay the permit issuance. Thank you for your cooperation. I'm just checking, because I went to the Oakland County Property Gateway, which does a nice job for Oakland County of defining properties and right-of-ways. And according to that website, and this is obviously coming from the Road Commission of Oakland County, but according to the Oakland County website, it appears as though it's clearly in the right-of-way, probably by 6 or 8 feet. And so I'm wondering, does this board, does this township even have jurisdiction if that location, according to the county, is accurate? I'll continue to read through this. Did the county actually come out and identify the location of the sign?
Well, it took them about 4 to 6 weeks. When I went October, I believe, 18th. I gave them the $200 for the application. And so they told me I have to wait, 4 to 6 weeks because they're busy. So I assumed they came by the location and drove by. So, I mean, that's not my handwriting over there. It's just, and I couldn't stamp it myself.
It does say here, reinstall a 3x3 lit sign on an existing pole within the Sashabaw Road right-of-way, east side. Provide proper site distance.
So it does say,
Yeah. On this third page. Okay, I'll open it up to my fellow board members. Alan, do you have any questions or thoughts?
He's just starting to go through the paper.
I'm just starting to
Ken,
look
you
through
want-
it. Go ahead.
I have one.
Go to
One
Ken.
thing.
I'm
Go ahead.
sorry, let me, go ahead. I didn't mean
I
to
also
cut you
have
off.
some feedback from our neighbors.
Please. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question.
Go ahead, Jim.
Since this pole is clearly in the Oakland County Road Commission right away, I stated before that I didn't feel this board had jurisdiction to approve something that wasn't on a property. What is, if this board was not to take any action, plus or minus, in this, what would be the reaction of the township?
I think we would likely go through enforcement action. The sign still needs an electrical permit, still needs a sign permit, regardless of where it's being placed, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
So, we would start an enforcement action, because it was placed without, unless she applied for permits. I don't know of too many signs that are in the right of way where the ZBA has not taken action to at least allow it to be placed not 15 feet back, as the sign setback is.
So historically, the zoning board has taken some action, even if the sign, post, whatever, is not on the property.
Correct, because you're still placing a sign against the ordinance, against the ordinance.
Right.
So for sign setback. So if you were to make a motion of approval, it would actually make the property whole and the sign legal. So theoretically, she could come in tomorrow and apply for the sign permit and the electrical permit. Actually, her contractor can, because they're the sign installer.
And the electrical's already there.
Yeah, well, you still have to have an electrical permit.
Okay,
So,
not a problem.
you know, she can come in tomorrow theoretically, or her contractor, and apply for the permit, now that we have, you know, if the ZBA is approved, you know, the variance is approved.
So Brian, do we have any other examples within the township of signs in the right-of-way?
I suspect the one at where, Dairy Dream used to be, it's the Taco Vita, I suspect that's in the road right away. Right along Sashabaw, I don't know if that was one of the pictures or not.
Mhm.
I think it is the one she took, yes.
I suspect that's in the road right away. That's historically been here for probably greater than 40 years at this point, and it was reskinned a few years ago.
The height and width didn't change?
Nope. No, that was under the old sign ordinance where you could reskin and you could reface a sign, and actually the poles were collapsing, so theoretically it was a repair, and he dressed it up with that stone veneer.
But that never came before us.
No, it did not, and, you know, that was handled by the previous administration, but it likely should have. You know, but, because I don't think we have any record of that sign ever coming to the ZBA.
Where is this again?
Where the Taco Vita is and the Buddy's Pizza, that center,
the
that used to
corner?
have Dairy Dream,
Northeast corner of Sashabawn, maybe.
Oh, okay.
next to Pine Knob Wine Shop.
Oh, all right, okay.
So that likely is in the road right away.
Okay. I want to be clear that, because you've got a lot of letters, a lot of support from the neighborhood, which is great. And I want to be really clear, because something struck me as I read that first letter. You know, our job here as a ZBA is to understand the township ordinance and apply it fairly and safely to our community. And, you know, our board really every month, I think, goes out of its way to support local businesses, to thank local businesses. I think most of us up here have owned or do own small local businesses. So it's not about supporting or not supporting the business. It's about wanting to you know, enforce the rules of our township or modify them when appropriate. And so I just want to, you know, kind of state that we're on your side from that point of view. You know, we want you to be successful.
Yeah, see, the only thing I don't understand, I'm sorry to cut you off, but the pole has been there for 50 years.
No,
Just like they did here, and maybe in
It's an
Sashabawn.
unusual circumstance, and I think the questions so far, and we haven't gone to the whole board yet, but the questions that have been raised by the board this evening and in October are appropriate because it's not on the property, it's in the right-of-way, and so it's an unusual circumstance. You know, and the question of jurisdiction, do we even have the ability, and Brian's clarified that a little bit, do we even have the ability to approve something? You know, it's like, if I wanted to do something on my neighbor's property, you know, I'm really not allowed to, so it's a question. So that's what we're wrestling with, is, you know, what jurisdiction do we have to approve something not outside of the right-of-way or in the right-of-way? Brian?
I just want to point out too, we see this a lot now in the township because our sign ordinance has changed a few years ago. You know, nowadays, you cannot just reface a sign without achieving a permit. And this is a similar circumstance where it's an old sign post, but bottom line is you need a permit on anything now, any change of face, anything, any structural modification requires a permit, and that's why we're in front of you now, you know, because I can't approve that administratively. So it's a circumstance, you know, we've had the Pine Knob Music Theater come before you. We just had one on Ortonville Road last month, I think, or the month before, come before you. So this is a circumstance of the new sign ordinance. And this is a way to eventually get all signs brought into conformance.
Makes
So,
sense.
that was the trigger and why the planning commission did what it did, requiring all permits for structural changes.
Trying to bring everything. Thank you, Brian. Jim, I cut you off. We were finished, or do you have any
No,
other notes?
he answered my question.
Okay. Brian?
I guess, seeing the information that she brought in, you know, I don't wanna move the goalpost on her. Our biggest concern was road commission and safety. With the road commission viewing it and with the exact sentence in there that they approve the existing pole. I mean, I don't see how I personally can tell her no at this point with doing what we asked her to do, but I would be comfortable only if we limit it to the current owner, current tenant, and current use. And if any of that changes, it has to achieve conformity. That's all.
Thank you, Brian. Ken?
I am a little bit hesitant, and I know you have pictures here, and you're talking about the two locations, possible locations, one on the northern side and one on the southern side, but and I believe your argument on the southern side is you wanted more of a vantage point for the drivers driving north to see your sign?
Not just that, I have a neighbor right across the street, if you can see.
Yeah, I don't understand. Yeah, I
And
don't
this is
quite
the
understand
neighbor that always, you know, like has a little issue, right there. No, yeah, that one.
Yeah,
So if I put a sign right there in his face,
right here.
he's really definitely gonna have an issue there.
Well,
So,
it's perpendicular to him, right?
right in his window. But he does have a lot of trees covering a lot of the windows there to begin with, and I have pictures of it to show you. I believe it's page number 22, 23 maybe. You can
Yeah.
see that the house is covered with lots of trees, tall trees. And there's nobody else close by. The other house is really far back, so he
Yeah.
can't really see the sign, really.
23.
And they're on a hill, so my sign's gonna be under 6 feet anyway. And I have a hill on the north end, so I have people going south, they can't even see my sign until they get to my road. Because I have at least 6 feet of, you know,
Great
diet,
change.
you know, like, yeah, so.
Right.
And on the other side is a lot of trees on Lake Oakland.
So your question, Ken, is
Well-
maybe one of hardship in terms of location?
Yeah, I understand it would, maybe you have to pay more for electrical and stuff, but I'm wondering if, for the benefit of our community, that, you know, that area just gets paved over, the old existing pole, that area gets paved over as the parking lot, and you just move the sign off to the side,
The side of what?
the south side.
That's just gonna cost me a lot of money. I just don't have the money. Actually, I paid $480 and $200, and I can't keep paying, like, I have to come back again and pay $900. It's just a lot of hardship for me, I'm sorry.
Understand. I don't think I have any questions.
Alan?
I'm totally opposed to it for safety. And an example of it is the sign at the shopping center at White Lake Road near Dixie.
White Lake,
White Lake and Dixie.
White Lake and Dixie.
It's in a similar location. It's a bigger sign, granted, but if a person is pulling out of your shop and pulls out, their front bumper is gonna be out close to the road. Their line of sight is through your sign. If they're looking down towards northbound Sashwa. If they come out this way, they've got the same situation where their front bumper's here, but they're sitting back here where your sign is to look out. If they sit back here and try to judge to jump out into traffic, it's almost impossible, and we have numerous accidents. I live close to that intersection, and it's a terrible situation, and The planning department has looked over these ordinances and moved these signs back purposely to try to increase safety, so they don't block vision.
I understand that, but I'm the one who parks over there, and I know how to back up my car. And then I also have arrows going from one side to the north side so people can sit there for a minute, because I have a hill there anyway, regardless if the sign was there or not. I have a hill there that's blocking a lot of things.
Okay. Anything else, Al?
No, I think the best location, I go along with Ken, I think the best location for your sign is back in here.
That's where I have all the trees. That means I have to cut all the trees down, put another $10,000 for electricity and a pole. So you're just, telling me no. So,
If, we're gonna open it up to public comment now?
go ahead.
Appreciate it. Is there anybody in the audience that would like to address this application? Any comments on this? I will say, as anybody makes their way up, there are a tremendous number of letters. I haven't read every one of them, but they seem to all be letters of support from neighbors. I would say there's probably 25 letters here. We'll give these to Brian for the record. People have signed, I guess, what essentially is a petition, and it outlines the history of the various businesses, from barber shops to Coach's Corners, that have been in this location for the last 50 years or more. Presumably all, at least a certain number of those using this sign. And so there's, as I say, letters of support, and also we'll enter this in from the Road Commission, dated December 2nd, 2022, which is the application for the permit. The Road Commission does acknowledge in here, from what I can understand, that it is located in the right-of-way to reinstall a 3x3 lit sign on existing pole within the Sashabo Road right-of-way, east side at 4580 Sashabo. It does go on, Alan, to according to the Road Commission, that the applicant is to provide proper site distance, is one of the conditions from the Road Commission, to provide proper site distance. I'm not sure how they define that.
When I built and developed a subdivision out in Springfield, the line of sight is extremely long.
So I'll read this because this is the permit description from the Road Commission of Oakland County. I just read the first sentence. Fixed objects, which a sign would be considered, shall be no nearer than 6 foot from the back of the finished curb or 12 foot back from the edge of pavement. Signing and landscaping will not be maintained by the Road Commission for Oakland County. In the event that landscaping becomes a traffic or site distance problem or interferes with the maintenance of the road or the right-of-way, or if the road right-of-way is required for future improvements by the Road Commission, in other words, if they're going to expand the road at a future date for Oakland County or other public agencies or utility, applicant will perform maintenance on, relocate, or remove the landscaping and signs at the request of the Road Commission at no cost to the Road Commission or the public. Notify the inspector or permit supervisor 48 hours prior to beginning the work. All construction shall be in accordance with the attached approved plan and application for the file Clear Choice Properties as prepared by Clear Choice Properties, and with the Road Commission of Oakland County supplementary permit specifications as follows. All construction shall be in accordance with an attached approved plan and application on file with the Road Commission Oakland County. I'm just looking for the attached plan. Was there a plan that went with the county application that would show that it's 12 foot from the edge of pavement?
It might be on the computer that I have. Not sure. I mean, the map that I drew them?
Well, there is no drawing.
Well, the permit clearly says that there was an attached plan, this is coming from the county, that their approval is conditioned on the attached plan.
Yeah, there was 3 attached things, I'm sorry, but I only copied that. I figured you just need that.
I'll need that.
Yeah, so,
I mean, they also cited existing pole,
yeah, okay.
so the pole exists.
We had no public comment. It doesn't look like there's anybody online. I will bring it back to board for additional questions, comments, or a motion.
Make a motion in case 22-021 to deny the request as posted.
For the reasons stated.
I don't find a hardship where the sign can't be moved to a more safer location. The, doesn't show truly a extreme hardship on topography or anything from, I'm looking at the picture that's on Ken's screen right now, and I don't see why it can't be moved to a safer location. I don't see where she has any.
We have a motion to deny based on lack of hardship or alternate locations that would be safer and in compliance with the ordinance. Do we have support?
I'll support it.
Motion and support. If we get a roll call, please, Brian?
Mr. Auger?
Yes.
Mr. Epping?
No.
Mr. Galley?
No,
Mr. Charles?
Yes.
And Mr. Zurich?
Yes.
So there's a motion to deny. That motion passed, so this location did not receive a variance from the ZBA. So there are alternatives within the property where a sign could be located and located safely in accordance with the ordinance. So we'd ask you to look at those locations. Appreciate your time.
So did you say I'm denied?
Yes,
Okay, can I go up on the podium again?
yes.
Sir, I just want to tell you that I make less than $30,000, unlike a lot of you here. And for me, that's a lot of hardship. So if you don't consider me starting this whole business again after COVID, after a year and a half.
Ma'am, if I could interrupt you. So we appreciate that. We certainly do. And again, we support you and your business. What we're trying to do is make sure that the roads are safe and there's alternatives. The way the zoning board, not only our zoning board, but zoning boards across the state define hardship, it's not a financial hardship. It's not a hardship if something's difficult for me to do. It's a hardship based on the uniqueness of the property, and if there are no other alternatives within that particular property to do what's being asked. So in this case, a hardship is saying, boy, there's absolutely 0 other locations within this property in which this sign could be located, therefore it must be located here. If there's 0 other locations, that would be considered a hardship. In this case, the ZBA here has determined that there may be or are other locations, and therefore there's not a unique hardship to this property.
So if I move it to the south, who's going to pay for that?
Again, this board is not, the criteria is not financial hardship, but it's a hardship for locations of the property.
But didn't you say last time if I get an approval from the road commission, you're going to reconsider that? And I got an okay and I got a permit, so I don't understand that.
Okay. Well, we're happy to talk about it additionally at the building department. We've made a motion. I think, it was well-defined in terms of safety concerns, and I wish you luck. We continue to support your business.
Okay.
Would you like us to keep this for the record, or would you like these back?
Yes, I will give it back. Thank you.
I've given you my agenda.
I need a copy of all that.
You want
Can you
a
leave
copy of
me-
these, Brian?
Yeah, I
So
need a
Brian
copy.
can make a copy.
Is it
We
fine?
need them for the records.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's fine.
All right, moving on to new business. I will call case number 22-027, Paul and Kimberly Daniels, petitioner, requesting 3 total variances. The first is a variance from section 5.06 for the placement of an accessory structure in the front of a, thank you. Thank you. First is a variance from section 5.06 for the placement of an accessory structure in the front of a principal structure. The second is a 63-foot front yard setback variance for section 5.06 for an existing historic pole barn. And the third is a 22.6-foot side yard variance from a principal structure. All variances in order to construct a new home and keep a historic pole barn at 8780 Perry Lake Road, which is in the R1R Rural Residential Zoning District.
Mr.
Sir,
Epping,
yes.
can I just clarify something?
Okay, say what?
When I wrote this, I was thinking about the barn that's to the south, and it's not. It's actually just a house.
So it's that, so I had that question, so it's the existing
Yeah.
house that's in the, kind of the
Yeah,
front of
because
the
I've
the
had many
barn's on the,
conversations with Mr. Daniels, and we've talked about that barn a lot.
it's a pretty cool barn. So the barn is on the adjacent property, which I
Correct.
think may be owned by the applicant, but we're
Yeah.
talking about the existing house. It's closer to the road.
Yeah, this
Not the
this
barn.
doesn't have any impact on his request. I just wanted to point that out for the
So,
record.
Brian, just so that we've got our i's dotted, in the past, if things are not noticed, sometimes we have to table those, but in my experience, those have always been if the dimension was not mentioned. In this case, it's just calling a barn a house, a barn.
Yeah.
Do we have an issue with notification?
No,
Okay, thank you.
doesn't
Sir?
have any impact on the application.
Thank you. Good evening.
Very good. Good evening.
Can I
My-
interrupt? I'm sorry.
Excuse me.
So we're scratching the request for variance 1?
No, all the variances still apply. It's just the
word.
nomenclature of historic pole barn
That's
is
the historic
supposed to be a
barn.
house.
It's not.
The barn is on the property to the south.
Substitute historic pole barn for existing home.
The
No.
existing ranch
Strike
homes.
historic. Because it's barns on the adjacent property.
Right, that's right.
There's nothing historic about this house with the 2 things they're gonna take
My
out.
suggestion is that, and maybe we should have done this in our agenda review, but remove the word from this new business case number 1. Remove existing historic pole barn and replace it with existing home. Is that correct, Brian?
Correct.
Make sense?
I'm sure I'll come along with it now.
There's still
The
a-
numbers still apply. The numbers all still apply. So,
Go ahead, sir.
When a person types up these minutes that's watching this and listen to the recordings, will that person,
we'll have it corrected.
okay, thank you.
Okay, well, good evening. Maybe this discussion will clear this up a little bit. Thanks, my name is Paul Daniels. I'm here with my wife Kimberly. We're residents of 80 North Holcomb in the village of Clarkston, and we're talking about 8780 Perry Lake Road. Because this has just come up, I do want to mention quickly the neighboring property, 8700 Perry Lake Road to the south. Kim and I bought that property about 4 years ago. Both properties and the other surrounding properties, we understand, were part of an orchard back in the mid-19th century. So this had been a farm area, and on 8700, the neighboring property, there is a large barn. So that's one piece of the puzzle. We bought that property, it was in pretty bad distress. The barn was in pretty bad distress. We fixed up the barn that someone had used as a residence and brought it back to agricultural use, brought the property back up to agricultural use. We're growing produce, we're growing flowers for the community, and we're happy to see 8700 functioning as a farm again. When 8780 became available about a year and a half ago, we took an interest in
Existing house.
putting a home on the property at 8780. And that's what we want to discuss this evening. There are a couple unusual things about the property 8780, and I don't know if Brian has a neighborhood site plan, but 8780 is a very narrow lot with respect to the neighbors and with respect to typical R1R zoning. quite a narrow lot. So you can see it's a little blue one there tucked in with within the others. So by the time we use the 50-foot setback on the north and south property lines, we end up with a very narrow buildable lot. So that's primarily the concern that we're up against, is that the buildable area within the lot is very small. When we consider topography, when we consider mature trees, driveway considerations, the buildable area becomes smaller still. So that's really what we're up against. The building in the front then becomes the next difficulty with respect to the property, and there is a historic element associated with it. The building in the front, which is up on the screen now, it's shown with the diagonal hatch and also a white portion. That building, of course, is way up in the front yard setback, and we don't believe that that's the right place to put a home. But as you look at that, I didn't realize exactly how this drawing was put together. The hatched areas are additions, and the white section of the house that has the lettering within it is a historic structure that goes back to the same mid-19th century farm. We understand, we've heard the term caretaker's cottage. We can't see a whole lot of that structure because it's kind of buried under drywall and vinyl siding and other things. The purpose of what Brian and I have an interest in accomplishing is that we would like to get the variance for the house and not simultaneously put ourselves in a position where we're required to remove the historic building up front. If possible, we don't know that we can save it. We don't know that it's salvageable. It's a little early to tell, but as long as we're dealing with placing a house on the property, we didn't want to simultaneously slam the door on removing a historic building that possibly could find additional use. So that's what we're talking about this evening. With respect to the house, having talked out of the proposed house and the side yard setback issues on the proposed house, we looked at quite a few different places to put the house. We considered it many different ways. All of them ran into quite a few difficulties with respect to setbacks and mature trees and whatnot. We came up with this version as the most appropriate to our interests, but we also felt most respectful to the strengths of the site and what could come out of the site. With respect to the setbacks themselves, we are the property owner to the south, so we are the property owner impacted by the south side yard setback. With respect to the side setbacks on the north, that is the neighbors, the Mitchell family. They are very much supportive of the project. They have a letter, which I think Brian has. They're in support. So both neighbors are supporting the variance with respect to the side yard setbacks. And the buildings on the respective properties are, in each case, 150 or more feet away. So I think we're pretty good with respect to the spirit of the ordinance by keeping the major buildings well over 100 feet from one another. So that's what we brought to you this evening. We're interested in your comments and happy to answer questions.
Thank you. So, and Brian, maybe you can help me clarify. So to summarize it quickly, we've got a structure that at least part of it's historic. You're considering saving that and then building a new, larger home to the rear. Brian, am I right in interpreting that the first variance, a variance for the placement of an accessory structure in the front of a principal, the new home becomes the principal structure, therefore the old homes becomes the accessory structure. It's in front of what will be the new home, and therefore the first variance is to essentially allow the historic structure to stay in front of
Correct.
the new home. So that's the first variance request. The second is a 63-foot front yard setback from that. Is that 63 also a variance request now for the historic home? Because the new home will be within
Yeah,
the front yard setback.
yeah, no, it's for the quote-unquote existing structure.
And then the third variance is a 22.6-foot side yard setback. And is that a side yard setback for the new home on the north property line?
For the new home, yes.
On the north property line?
Yes.
Okay.
It's, yeah, I struggled with writing this to.
No, it makes
make
sense. I
make
just wanted,
sense.
because,
Because what I wanted to do was, there's no record of a variance here because obviously this home's been around for a long time. So I was trying to make this property whole. If you can't save, I would probably, if you were to approve this tonight, I would make a motion contingent on the fact that you're keeping this particular home, so he doesn't have a blanket variance essentially to build a pole barn down the road, in that location.
right. But potentially keeping the old historic house causes 2 of the 3 variances.
Yes.
Okay. Ken, did you have something you just?
No, I think you clarified it, that you were trying to clean up the older structure.
Yeah.
I was just making sure that that was what was going on.
I have a
So-
record-keeping question while you're on that.
Yeah.
So, on the site plan, they have the building envelope, the south side of the house is outside the envelope as well.
The 32-foot dimension?
Are the setbacks 50 on each side?
Yeah, but he's removing that hatched section.
No.
No,
the
this
the
is
new
the new
house.
house.
is-
The
Oh,
most
the new
southerly
house?
corner.
No, the variance that's called for is for the
The
greatest
smallest
variance.
variance. Yeah,
So,
The north
it-
one is smaller than the south.
In other words, you
Here,
could build
smaller
it,
than that
you're
one.
getting a 22-foot
If
on
you
both
prove this
north
Yeah.
and
one.
south.
yeah, it covers both.
What? A variance on one side covers both sides?
We've done that before.
I guess I've never seen it before, but I could be missing something.
Yeah, that's typically how we do it.
Okay.
Hmm.
That's interesting.
Doesn't make sense to me, but.
Yeah, me neither. So I guess I just need to understand the historic house a little bit better. What do you, assuming you take off the 2 newer parts and you've got a beautiful little historic house, what are you gonna do with it?
We've tentatively called it the potting shed. We don't really know. A very simple garden shed type of use would potentially what it would be. We don't have an overwhelming need for the structure. There's no plan of something that we're trying to accomplish. If we can do something that is respectful of it, that keeps it there, that is respectful of the neighborhood and zoning ordinances, we'll do everything we can to save it. So we're calling it a potting shed, a garden shed.
You referenced earlier a guest house. Do you think it would be a residence?
No, under no circumstance.
Under no circumstance would it be a residence.
How would we stop that 20 years from now?
It's in a motion that it
Can't
cannot
be
be used as a
As a residence.
residence for occupiable space.
We have that same circumstance on Sashabaw Road, pretty close to that last case,
The big yellow
right
barn.
by the bridge.
Is it
go ahead.
worth hearing the public next before we go on, or?
Sure, we can mix it up a little bit. Anything else, sir, before we open it up to the public?
Thank you.
Great. At this point then, if we could have anybody from the public that would like to speak on new business case number 22-027 on Perry Lake Road? Anybody here tonight to talk about this application? Seeing none, I don't see anybody additional online. No comments. Ken, any additional thoughts?
No, I guess we just talked about it. My first thought is what happens, 10, 15 years from now, if we can put that in the stipulation that this structure could never be used as a residence or rented out as a sublease for residents or, any type of living quarters for human or animal, I guess. I don't know if we should include that. That would be my concern. I would like to help you save the house if possible. I think that's nice effort. And of course, I understand that when you tear down on the side of it and you look at the foundation and it's a big problem, then it becomes maybe financially feasible to tear it down. I guess that would be okay also. That would be my thought and concern.
So if it was to be investigated and determined it wasn't able to be salvaged, and presumably it'd be removed, then those two first and second variances would essentially go away because there wouldn't be the ability to rebuild the structure there.
Correct.
Alan, any thoughts?
Principally, just about every question I had from visiting the site yesterday, because I noticed that the existing garages to the north, you're gonna tear those down for your driveway location.
That's right.
The topography out there is quite extreme, in some cases. My question is, the water feature that's at the rear of this is, do we have distance from that? Because I don't see anything on the site plan. Because when I drove down the lower driveway towards the back, you can see the water at the rear.
Wetlands.
Do you know what distance you're going to be maintaining from that water?
Just looking at it, at the photo, the aerial photo, we can figure it out. It's probably 300 feet. I could
Oh, okay.
try to get that
Yeah,
number for you.
I mean, it's a wetland, so he's gotta maintain at least 25 feet.
And
the
we
se-
do
the septic's
have-
in the back, so it's,
So they've already approved that?
Yeah.
Okay.
And we do have the septic permit from the county, so they've already taken a look at fitting the septic field with
And as
respect to
Jim
the water
mentioned,
feature.
that's at the rear, and that's got to be a 50-foot
Yeah,
separation
so
there.
they've already looked at that side of the problem.
Okay, okay, and I go along with what's already that the building is in front, never to be used as a residence, and if it's found not to be able to be rebuilt, no structure could be put back there. When you drive Prairie Lake Road, there's, I think, 3 freestanding accessory structures along that side of Prairie Lake Road already existing, but not that we want any more.
Right.
Yeah, I will point out too, this property historically has had many enforcement problems, so Mr. Daniels and Mrs. Daniels buying this will certainly clean up the property, and if they haven't already, I haven't been out there in a while, but, you know, it's a big help to us, you know, here in the township.
He's got a beautiful garden.
Because you
out
can see it on the
behind
aerial
Yeah, it looks like
photo.
a heck of a garden.
a lot of stuff there.
Yeah, a lot of stuff going on there.
Jim, any additional thoughts or
When I
questions?
looked at it, it looks like the part in the back is like a dormer that's added onto that house.
Are you looking at referring to the elevations? This is
No,
the-
I'm talking about the
Existing
existing house, and you're gonna tear off this little box in the back.
No, there's two boxes,
Yeah, the box that's behind where.
behind and to the south. So
That looks, the roof line is,
Yeah, it's all over the place. It's a kind of, it's
that
a,
looks
it's
to
a
me like
messy
that
deal.
could be difficult.
The original building, which again is that kind of white portion in
Right.
the corner, it's a kind of a milk carton type salt box kind of a thing.
There must be something going on inside of it that would
Yeah,
still
it's
maintain
quite
that original
complicated.
roof.
Yeah, someone kind of dreamed up these additions that are leaned up against it.
I mean, when you look at it, it just doesn't say, oh yeah, you just take that box off and you take that box
Yeah.
off and you got
Yeah,
this,
we
but
have
that didn't look
seen-
like that.
We have seen some photos of the structures. It must go back to the 1950s before the additions were put on. So we do have some sense without doing a lot of research
No,
about what it originally looked
I
like.
basically don't have any objections with this entire package with the codicil that it can never be used for an inhabitable house. Because you can't have two houses
Right.
on one piece of property.
Yeah,
Thanks,
just
Jim.
to reiterate what everybody said about the front structure, and, I mean, we're throwing around historical value on it. I don't know how you quantify that, but if it's, you know, we're not keeping it just to keep it because it's easy and it's already there. Secondly, the comment I made earlier about both sides being out of the envelope, I mean, I just can't wrap my head around if somebody comes in here for a 20-foot side yard setbacks, that means he can go over 19 feet on the other side because it's shorter. So just for the record, you know, maybe it's missed because the petitioner owns the property to the south and it was just kind of a missight or what, but I'm not uncomfortable with your project. I'm uncomfortable with the record-keeping portion of it,
Yeah,
is what I'm trying to say.
we've historically written it to the greatest variance on a side yard. So,
What then,
but it's also, this variance is also tied to what he's doing.
I understand that.
So, we've always done it that way, but I get your point.
Yeah,
I don't wanna come in for a 20-yard setback variance on the right side and then just increase my
22.
house the other way.
Yeah, another,
That's the point, it's not going
4
to
foot to the
19,
house.
it would be going to 22 on the other side.
I just
A
wanna
greater
see them
variance.
both listed.
So we advertise the greatest variance.
But again, the project and what you're doing to the property and the barn to the south, great. Just reiterate what everybody said about the existing front structure, and that 1 point for the record keeping. That's it.
So I thank you, Brian. I agree with the right, yeah, in my mind, maybe just say in the future, north and south, no greater than 22 foot or whatever. I
Fine.
do have questions related to the third variance and the location of the proposed house and the fact that you do own the adjacent property.
Right.
And I'm just wondering, in the spirit of trying to avoid variances,
Yeah.
which is one of the goals of this board, if the properties were to be joined together, and then that new home slid to the south
Yeah, right.
onto, or closer to the existing property, but that property
Yeah.
line goes away, now you just have one piece of property. Seems to me as though that house could be positioned without any variances related to the new house, short of the two variances related to the existing historic structure. Is there a reason not to do that?
Well, it's a good question. We've talked about that a good bit, and we can see arguments for or against that, so I very much respect the question. And someday we may want to do that, quite honestly. It ties our hand a little bit with respect to thinking forward in the future in our retirement plans, whether this is one property we have to deal with or two, and what we might live on. So there's a little bit of that concern that it definitely encumbers some of our flexibility in the future. It also potentially puts us in a situation where we've given up an opportunity for accessory structures, and given that two properties become one, and we're already trying to get some operations going on, we might just end up coming right back for a variance on accessory structure. So those are the two things that come to mind, that whereas we respect the question and would be open to it, our preference would not at this time.
No, I appreciate that, and it's, I go back to the conversation we had earlier tonight of hardship, and it's a little different, because if you didn't own that property, then that wouldn't be a question I would ask, right? On the other hand, we've had cases here in the past where the applicant has actually gone and negotiated with a neighbor and bought X number of feet and, kind of reparceled the two properties and brought them into compliance without having to get a variance or
Yeah.
as great of a variance. So that's, let's say you didn't own that, but based on some of the actions this board has taken over the last several years, that may be a scenario where, you could approach your southern neighbor and buy X number of feet.
Yeah.
If that doesn't compromise that property in terms of its zoning, and I haven't looked at that, so, I like to preserve options too in the future, but again, if we're looking at this from an ordinance point of view, does it encroach on the northern neighbor, even though that current neighbor may not be opposed to this? Does it encroach on that as opposed to kind of encroaching on the southern neighbor, which happens to be you?
He does bring a point, though, that this would, he'd be back in front of you with the current historic barn, the one on the property to the south, because that obviously predates our ordinance. So
So
if
that
you were
would-
to combine the lots,
So then you'd have two accessory structures, an historic barn and an historic house.
which he's allowed to have, he's over an acre, but still, I mean, if you combine these lots, we're back at square one with the variances for that historic barn location that's way up towards the front of the
You're
property.
still gonna have 2 or 3 variances.
You are, yeah.
Even if you reconfigured that to take the southerly property line and draw it perpendicular to Perry Lake Road, then that brings in the other one, the variances that would be necessary for
Yeah,
the big barn.
Yeah, that's right. That's what I'm saying, is if he were to combine this, then he's,
And I'm not talking about combining, I'm talking about reconfiguring.
oh, yeah,
Just take
even,
that property line and,
yeah, even if he carved it out somehow.
You may have additional variances for historic structure, but you're not gonna have a variance,
the sides would go.
to, I'll use the term encroach on
Yeah.
the neighbor,
Yeah.
but, okay.
And anything that happens on that other piece of property's gotta come back before us, because it's an existing structure, be in front of whatever's gonna be put on that property.
True, and it looks like it's wet behind it, so. We've already opened it up to the public. Are there any additional questions or comments from the board? If not, we could have a motion.
I'll make a motion in case number 22-027 to allow the setbacks as advertised, noting that the variance is for the site plan that is presented to the board. There'll be no habitable use of the structure at the front of the property. And if the structure cannot be rebuilt or refixed economically, or the building department views that it's not salvageable, then it must be removed, and no other structure can ever be replaced in the front yard of the new home. Does
We have a
anybody have
motion.
any other comments I can add to this, or?
Do we need to say that it's not all, it's also for no animals, or, I mean, does it turn into a horse barn or something, or a kennel, or do we need to say that, or, because it's not, it can't be a place of business, so, I mean, right now, I don't see what would be stopping it to turn into a kennel.
The ordinance does.
The ordinance does?
Yeah, you can't have a kennel on that property.
The petitioner has said it's more of a potting shed is what his intent is, and that's in the record, so, for that use, I'll say.
We have a motion with comment. Do we have support?
I'll support.
Any additional comment? Brian, if we could have a roll call, please?
Mr. Epping?
No.
Mr. Galley?
Yes.
Mr. Charles?
Yes.
Mr. Zurich?
Yes.
Mr. Auger?
Yes.
Congratulations, you've got 3 approved variances. Obviously, with the discussion, it sounds like an exciting project, so good luck.
Very good. Thanks
Thank
all.
Beautiful garden behind the barn.
Thank you. Sirs.
We do take a look at these.
Thank you. So we're moving on to the second case under new business, case number 22-028. Shane Denton, petitioner, requesting a 20-foot front setback variance from section 4.06D in order to permit the construction of a new home on a newly split lot southwest corner of Church Street and Hillside Drive, which is within the R1A single-family residential neighborhood. We have the applicant on. Come on up, how are you?
Good. I'm Courtney. I'm a little bit nervous, but so
Take
if
your
you don't
time.
mind, I'm gonna read my speech.
Thank you.
Good.
Yeah, thank you guys. Thank you for your time today. I'm Courtney Denton, and I've lived in this sweet town since 6th grade, and I am a graduate of Clarkston. I luckily recruited my husband from Rochester, and we had bought this property that I have been walking for years and loving it, and always being pulled to it, never knowing that one day my family and I would own it. It truly feels meant to be to raise our family there. We are here asking for just a 20-foot setback on one side, not 2, as the front also has a 40-foot setback. This will not affect anyone, but will allow us to build the right house facing the right direction with the right flow that will beautify the area. There are no safety issues, as we have 4 small children and would never want there to be any safety issues. The property already has trees, 2 stone pillars, touching the road, a row of mailboxes, and cars parked on our back lot. Speaking of the other lots, Lot A was bought as our parents are getting older, and we thought how beautiful that perhaps they could live by us and the grandkids someday. If they decide to, there are no plans for this at this time. And Lot C will remain our backyard for our 4 children. The site is zoned residential and it's going to be built on. We understand that there has been nothing on this land for many years. And change is tough, but we are hopeful this will be an easy and beneficial matter, considering what could have been developed there. In saying all of that, this 20 feet, about 3 of me tall, will be so beneficial and allow us to build our family home with the right flow and functionality. It will be a smooth and beautiful process, and we hope you will grant us this simple, helpful request. And please understand, we are so excited to raise our kids on this property where we are looking forward to walk to our parents, the park, and downtown. We are excited to be in a neighborhood filled with love, community, adventure, nature, and warmth. And we just are grateful for your consideration today.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. So,
It's okay.
this application was in front of the ZBA a month or 2 ago. And at that point, I think it was asking for the full variance
And-
on that Church Street. Is that right?
Jim, this is what we wanted to present last time. I don't know what happened last time, but the paperwork that got turned in was incorrect. This was the entire time the intent for what we wanted to do last meeting.
I appreciate that. So just to differentiate that application, or that original, at that point, so the requirement is you essentially have 2 fronts, Church Street and Hillside. Hillside is a
the
private
easement.
road.
Correct.
Private road with a 30-foot easement. You have the ordinance has a requirement of 40-foot setback from the right-of-way or from the private road easement. You're requesting a 20-foot. Brian, am I correct in thinking that the last application actually asked for a 40-foot?
25 or 30?
It asked for 30
Yeah,
it
last
was-
time.
Okay.
Yeah, it was greater.
Okay, so this is less. So to be clear, it's 20-foot from, the request is 20-foot from the easement line. It would actually be, according to the survey here, 25-foot essentially to the edge of the curb. So the home would be essentially 25-foot from the edge of the existing Hillside Drive.
Correct.
It meets, the site plan we're looking at meets the front yard setback, and it meets
Yes.
the, I guess it'd be the west side setback as well as the rear setback. Brian, if there was a deck involved with here, I'm thinking about some other, newer neighborhoods, do we have any issues with a raised deck? Because it looks like the home plan goes right to the rear setback line?
The decks are allowed to encroach 10 feet into the rear yard setback.
Okay. Okay. Great, I appreciate that. Anybody on the board want to start?
I'll just make a few comments. I believe we talked about this before, but just for clarification, Hillside Drive obviously is entirely on the petitioners and the petitioner's family's property, right? Totally contained on their property, the private easement drive.
Correct.
Yes.
That appears that way.
And the parcel B has 2 front setbacks. The house is on the other side of Hillside Drive across from parcel C. I remember a few of the members in the audience that were here last time lived in those homes. I mean, they essentially pretty much all have front yard setback variances, correct?
I'm sure they do, yeah. Either that
Do
or
or
they predate our
predate.
ordinance.
So it's not atypical for the area.
Absolutely not.
And to Jim's point about decks and additions and such, I mean, I would say that none of that stuff can go over, nothing can go outside the proposed box,
Brian, quick
as
question.
is.
Let us just go through and then we'll come back with
okay,
it.
sorry.
That's all the comments I have for now.
Okay. Jim, anything? We'll come back to you.
You made comment about those 3 houses that are on the south side of Hillside Drive.
Mhm.
Those parcels have, I don't see topo on this, but I'm familiar with the area, and those homes are squashed up there in front because of extreme topographic conditions. It drops off back because they go down to the lake.
Right.
I'm looking at your site plan, and you've got 65 foot of buildable width in the current allowable envelope, and it's gotta be at least 90 feet of depth.
Correct.
In my opinion, 65 by 90 feet is more than adequate to build any kind of house, and I'm not in favor of any kind of a variance in this particular
Well, we
case.
also have 4 small children, so we have a large family,
Let-
and
Let us just go through and then we'll come
Okay.
back
Well,
for
let's-
for comments.
65 by 95 is how many square feet?
You're looking at if you built the entire area above 5,400, and it's not.
And that's
that
on
just
one,
shows-
and that's on one floor.
Yeah.
but
and that
that's
just
narrow and
shows-
long.
And that,
65 feet is narrow?
So our house for the 6 children now is
6 people.
about 95 feet wide.
And you're also in Bridge Valley,
Correct. And
which are acre and a half lots.
yes, they are.
No, I'm
It's
sorry.
beautiful, and we love
Okay.
it there,
It's
and
not gonna
we,
change my opinion.
Okay,
Okay.
let's keep going. Alan?
A number of things. I mentioned the last time you were here, you need to go back to the drawing board and resplit this property. As long as I'm on this board, I never want to see a case come on Lot C at all. I would be totally against that. You're wanting to go within 25 feet of the asphalt. Where's the garage going to be located on which?
It's gonna come off of Hillside Drive.
So it's going to be a side entry because you're addressing off of Church Street?
yes. Oh, wait, well, I don't, where are we addressing?
Would it be, would you be like 101 Church or 101
We don't
Hillside?
have,
I honestly, no idea.
I don't know.
What that,
Okay.
Alan, can you,
Okay,
does it matter where the driveway's coming off? Does that dictate your
Well,
address?
yes, I'm looking at the 25 feet.
But how does that
Now,
affect addressing?
you have no room on this property whatsoever for an accessory structure. So you're not going to have a lawnmower outside. You're not going to be maintaining anything on this property unless you store it inside the garage. Is this going to be a typical 2-car garage?
No, we'd probably go with a 3-car garage.
Okay, so you're gonna have 3 cars, so one of those spots is gonna be taken up if you go with a 3-car for any lawn equipment, et cetera, to maintain the home. 25 feet, if you pull the car right tight to the garage, the bumper's gonna be just about at the asphalt line on most of the reasonable-sized cars or a truck.
Am I allowed to talk?
So, it's,
Am I allowed to say something?
I'm with Jim. This is a new lot split. You should be able to build within this envelopes that you've broken this property into. I'm totally against any ZBA cases on A, B, or C
I don't know what that
here.
Let's just go to Ken and then we'll ask you to respond to what you've heard.
Oh.
Ken?
Just to clarify, it was your family that split the lots?
Yeah, so my dad is gonna build us the house.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I think I remember that. I was just trying to refresh my memory because this was a couple months ago now. I don't think I have any questions.
Okay.
Go ahead.
I just wanted to talk a little bit about talking about how us and the neighbors will be using that easement. And right now we know that they're scrunched back there, and they too have their cars touching the easement, and even on our property. And we haven't said anything, so we're not really any different than what they've had to go through to get the house that they wanted.
So to the east of Hillside Drive, guys, there's probably 7 or 8 feet of brush right now, which we could clear out, that would make that significantly wider. So again, we're coming close, similar to everybody else, but like if we cleared that brush, it would still make it plenty wide for people to get up and down that street. And I think, I'm trying to be fair and we wanna get something and we'll work with everybody for what makes sense. But like, there's stuff we can do that I think that makes it beneficial or that it will work for everybody on that street.
Is there any other responses from anything that you've heard that we should have additional information before we open it to the public?
Alan, I wasn't sure when you said like where you'd be addressing off of. If my driveway is on Hillside Drive, does that give me a Hillside Drive address? I don't know.
It's all up to the township, I think.
Yeah,
Isn't-
we would address it when you apply for the building permit.
I think the point was just trying to understand, would the bumpers of the cars, would your driveway be accessed off of Hillside, or would it be off of Church? Architecturally, that it's either a front load or a side or a garage. I think Alan's point was, what's the distance from the nose of the car at the garage door
Gotcha.
to,
Okay.
and it's fairly easy in June. It gets to be more challenging in February with snow. And so those are the types of things we're looking at.
We might also say that
Church.
new developments in the township have come before us, and we've turned down numbers of them when they've tried to build too big a house or outside the building limits and all new subdivisions.
Okay. If we can have you guys take a seat, we'll open it up to the public. If we could just have people come up, assuming that you're here to speak on this, because no one spoke on the last two. If you could just come up one at a time, again, introduce yourself, name and address, and anybody that speaks tonight, if you haven't already signed in, please sign in on your way out, just so we can make sure our minutes are accurate. Good evening.
I'm John Mussett. I live on 6930 Hillside Drive. I'm right on the corner there. I know what he was talking about on the easement width. Right now, it's really only paved 15 foot wide, and I was trying to figure out why. There's no place to put the snow. If we actually move that thing out to 30 foot, we'll be putting the snow on his line if we go with that setback he's asking for. And I guess my other concern is you essentially bought a lot and trying to put a house on that doesn't fit. And that's my only thing.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Anybody else? No one else speaking? Anybody else online tonight? Okay. All right, with that, I will bring it back to the board for additional questions, comments, or a motion.
Well, not to prolong the night, I'll make a motion in case 22-028 to deny the request as advertised.
We have a motion to deny. Do we have support?
Support.
Brian?
Mr. Auger, can I ask you to state the reasons for denial?
I can't find a hardship for them to even apply to the ZBA in this case. There's no topographic, there's no hardship.
I'll amend my motion, or my support.
So we have a motion to deny based on lack of hardship. That amended motion's been supported. Brian, if we can have a roll call, please.
Mr. Galley,
No.
Mr. Charles,
Yes.
Mr. Zurich,
Yes.
Mr. Auger,
Yes.
and Mr. Epping.
No. So we've motion to deny. That motion has, where'd you go? There you are. That motion was voted, was approved as a denial. So the motion to, or I'm sorry, the application to grant a 20-foot front yard setback has been denied. Thank you very much. We let the last person say some additional words, so certainly if you'd like to come on up.
I just want to say that it is zoned residential property, and that no matter what, we're building our home there, and so it's not a parking lot, and it's not a road. So it was sold as a residential property. So we are definitely not here trying to make it difficult on anybody, any of the neighbors. We took time out with our kids to try to go meet some of the neighbors, because the first time we met them basically was when we bought the property, and some of the neighbors were asking us our plan. and it was very pleasant, and then we show up at the board meeting and we got a different situation. So we're very much looking forward to living there with our family, and it is residential. So
I think I appreciate your comments. It's a cool neighborhood, right? And it's a really neat house or location, and all the homes up there have so much character. Speaking for myself and my memory from the last meeting and from this meeting, I think a lot of people stated, hey, we always knew this was a lot, we always knew this would be built. I don't think anybody is saying that this shouldn't be residential. I'm sure it can be an incredibly beautiful house. We certainly have lots much smaller than this, and building envelopes much smaller than this in the township and obviously in the village that have phenomenal homes. So I personally am looking forward to a great home here. What was not granted tonight was an encroachment outside of the permitted residential building envelope. So as Mr. Charles pointed out, there's still a 65 by 90 foot, I believe, building envelope that could have, accommodate a really terrific house.
okay.
All right.
Well, thank you guys for your time.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Good luck. All right. With that, that ends our new business. I guess we do have one more new business item. We have reviewed, there in front of us, a 2023 ZBA meetings for the month. I think they're all the first Wednesday, probably other than July. You guys have a chance to look at it? Does it make sense to everybody? Know
Yeah,
what-
just, there's a clerical error. It says all the meetings are held on the third Wednesday at the bottom, which they probably just used the same form for another meeting schedule and didn't change it, so I don't think it really matters. The dates are correct.
But it is going into the record, so it's the first Wednesday, correct?
Does anybody plan on being away after Labor Day? I believe Labor Day is September the 4th, so this would be the Wednesday right after it.
Not at this point.
Okay.
Okay, we'll let Brian.
There's just a clerical error on there. It says at the bottom, the third Wednesday of every month.
Extra, asterisk.
Meeting held on the third Wednesday of the month.
Should be the
No,
first
that's
Wednesday.
it.
The dates are correct, it's just that
It says
notice.
meeting, asterisk.
Oh, that's the asterisk one.
That's
Oh,
the
that's
asterisk.
for-
All the rest is the same.
Yeah,
Gotta watch your asterisks.
See, this is what Springfield Township residents,
Yeah,
they're here to sabotage us.
yeah.
So that's obviously to avoid 4th of July, and then I'll be out of town that following week at a
So,
conference,
so there's 1 month that is the third, hence
everything
that.
else checks out.
Okay,
And we will have a meeting on January 4th, by the way.
I'll make a
For 1 day.
motion.
I'm gonna be absent from that when I have another meeting, at least
Okay.
at this point, unless it.
So
I'll know.
all I need you to do is just, if this is okay, then I can pass it on to the clerk's office.
You wanna make a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the 2023 regular meeting schedule of the Zoning Board of Appeals as presented.
Presented. Support, all in favor?
Aye.
I might make note that we have our local building official in the audience today.
He's always here. How are you? Good to see you. All right, let's keep going through the agenda. Next on the agenda is approval of the minutes from the November 2nd, 2022. Those were online. Opportunity to review. Does anybody have any changes or amendments to the minutes? Roy's done well.
Seeing no changes to the minutes as presented, I'll make a motion to approve the Wednesday, November 2nd, 2022 minutes as presented.
Support, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. With the meeting still open, any discussion, gentlemen?
No, I think tonight's meeting, we had some tough cases here tonight. I think the board did really well. I think the presentation of them was handled well.
Yeah, the applicants did a good job, Brian. Appreciate all your diligence. I think you brought up a good point that just as we go into the new year, to remind ourselves that as we enter our motion, and you amended yours to do it well, is to provide some thought on why it is, so that if someone comes back to the record or we look at the minutes 6 months from now, we'll remember what a hardship was or why we supported or whatever the case. It's always
Yeah,
good
you have
to.
to keep in mind that the next step, if you get denied, is circuit court. So,
You have to give reason.
so yeah,
Thank you.
it's, whether you approve it or deny it, you have to give proper reasons why. And lack of hardship, is obviously one of them. As you pointed out earlier in the meeting, Jim, can you explore other solutions,
Yeah, that was a good summary.
So,
Right.
and this is self-created, obviously, this previous case.
Right. Any other discussion? Now we can close the minutes, or close the meeting?
I'm not gonna make that motion.
We're gonna
that
sit here because
quickly.
Alan's done making motions.
Motion to adjourn at 7:25?
Support.
All in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned. Thank you.
So
And I guess, happy holidays, Merry Christmas,
yeah,
Happy
Merry
New Year.
Christmas.
We'll see you.